Hey there, internet friends. Trevor Starkey here with another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. Joining me this week, we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on, nerds?
What is going on? And we have Frank Bazzani on the show. How you doing, Frank?
Doing good, Trevor. How are you doing tonight?
Doing good. Let me see. I'm going to try and resize images a little bit because I'm seeing a little bit at the bottom of the Discord boxes on you guys. So there we go. Okay. Yeah, still just trying to figure out all the fun Discord stuff of video podcasting, especially with more than like two people. But yeah, it's going to be a fun episode. Today we're talking about a lot of Cyberpunk talk, as well as a little bit of an Assassin's Creed update. But before we dive into that, if you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. And if you're feeling extra generous, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, just like all of our wonderful, wonderful patrons have this holiday season. Let's dive right on in. Cyberpunk will be kind of the main topic of the show, I imagine. So before we hop into that, let's talk a little bit. Frank, you said you've been playing the Assassin's Creed Valhalla Yule update. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the last update they did 2.0 for Assassin's Creed Valhalla included besides a lot of like patch updates and kind of bug fixes, it included this big Yule update. That the best way I think I can kind of describe it off the bat is it's basically like the Animal Crossing winter update. It's kind of like it feels exactly the same because like I have this village and I know like I got to know some of the people there, so like those people are there just like partying and you can interact with them. Uh, but so like it was really unexpected because I hadn't heard about it and I really was just expecting like bug fixes. And so when I loaded in and there was snow all over the place and there was just like this big pyre that was on fire, and then there was just a bunch of people like in my camp all excited and running around. Like I just thought that was cool. And you kind of have the cutscene where the guy explains like what is going on, and he explains like that they have Yule tokens now, which is like a special currency for the event.
Yeah, that he made himself.
Yeah, I did like that because then Ivor, he's like, I made them myself, and Ivor's like, yeah, it definitely looks like it. And he's like, and I love that like backhanded like compliment. Uh, but yeah, like I don't know, it's been fun so far. Like it is very limited. It's not much more than that. Like I guess the biggest thing is getting those Yule tokens. There's a couple different side missions and different events, and it's some of it's like stuff that's like in the open world already, like the drinking contest, in like the fighting tournament, and then also the bow. There's like the shooting targets with your bow to get a score.
Mm-hmm.
All that's like stuff that you've already done or like is in the open world, but now it's like in your camp, and whenever you do it, they'll give you tokens. And there's a store that has like that's going to be open for the event that has limited gear in it. That's basically, I'm assuming, only available in this event. There's tattoos, there's a weapon, there's a shield, and there's a full armor set. I actually calculated in my head, and it's like 800 Yule tokens to get everything, and I'm like, that's kind of insane because like you get like 70 for doing the fighting tournament, and the fighting tournament takes like 10 plus minutes, like because you have to beat like 10 rounds. But I eventually like did a bunch of stuff, and I got some of the stuff I kind of wanted, like the stuff from my camp and the limited weapons that they have. Like it's a Seeks that's like red, and there's also a shield that's red. It's like a ceremonial like Yule shield. So I got both of those and some other stuff for the camp, and then it's cool. It just seems a little bit shallow after I was playing around with it a bit, and one of the missions was already buggy and broken right out the gate. Somebody steals the ale for the event, and you have to go steal it back, and then the place they tell you to go is all the way on the other side of the map. And I was like, that's pretty weird. And then I didn't look it up in time, but that's broken. That you're actually just supposed to go like 20 feet to the edge of the water, and the guy's there with the boat. But it tells you to go all the way on the other side of the map, like 3,000 meters away. And I noticed that the map icon is like sunken. So I was like, is it underground? Like what? I went to the place and I couldn't fucking figure it out. And
Oh,
I
that's
Googled
terrible.
it, and eventually it was just broken. Now it's more terrible though, because since I left that area and since I like have moved around and done shit, now that's just broken for me forever because the cask of ale I need is just gone for forever. So I can't
That
even now I
sucks.
know where the guy is, but I can't bring him the quest item, and that quest is just I'm never going to do that for the rest of the game. I guess it expires in 20 days and it'll be gone forever, and I'm never going to do it again.
Yeah, that sounds like Assassin's Creed. I mentioned I hopped into to the game to see if the new patch would let me do the one mystery that I am missing for like 100% completion, and it's still busted. I can't fix that one. It's still broken. But the intro kind of cutscene to the Yule celebration stuff. My Ivor and the guy that was kind of running the Yule event. They're talking on a bridge, and just like the cutscene would just play out, and just randomly they would be suddenly 5 feet up in the air and then back on the ground, and just like I was like, okay, yep, still a bit of a buggy mess here. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, cool. But you mentioned apart from that, you beat the game just in general. What were your kind of overall thoughts? We talked at length a couple weeks ago, certainly on the game. But any updated impressions now that you've beaten it?
Yeah, I still really like the game. I still think this is probably the best Assassin's Creed they've done. Like, I've really been a big fan of this like reinvented trilogy they've had. And so Origins, eventually I was like, this is the best one. Then Odyssey, I was like, man, they made it even better. This is the best one. And I didn't think they could do it again, but I feel like they really did step up so many things from Odyssey that I really, really personally liked. And I even thought the story was a lot better than Odyssey, even just with some of the things they did. Felt a little bit more interesting, and even I thought the payoff was a little bit more interesting too. And especially without getting to spoilers, like there's some stuff like where I was like, it just gets incredible towards the end. With I thought some of the stuff they did, and even some of the stuff they play with like modern day.
Yeah.
But there was also some other frustrations where I felt like they just left some things unresolved, and I feel like it was like, well, we'll get to that in DLC or whatever, but I'm like, oh my god, Ubisoft, like, because I know there's going to be this like these two big like DLC packs. It's probably just like Odyssey, like there's going to be these big hour-long adventures that'll continue the story. But I'm just like, man, I there's just things I wanted to know that I didn't get answers to, and as far as I'm aware, the answers aren't in the game. Like at this point, like we're just gonna have to wait for like future games or like DLC probably.
Hmm.
But so that's one of my bigger problems with it. I also thought the actual ending itself is paced a little bit weird. The way they actually gameplay wise they make you play it,
Yeah.
I thought that was it was broken up really weird and left me kind of unfulfilled.
Yeah, I thought the again, without getting into spoilers, I enjoyed the ending because I like the modern day stuff, and I like how they kind of like incorporated those elements into the game.
So,
Yeah. Yes, Cam.
question, query. When it comes to the the modern storytelling, at the end of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, it ends on a very particular note
Mm-hmm.
with the character, with the modern day character. How do they like? Because that was very much following like a very specific line of like what they were going through with that. How do they? Is it the same gal?
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
you're the same character that you've been playing as since Origins, and it very much kind of picks up where that that story leaves off. The staff that you pick up in that game kind of has its healing properties and stuff, so that's incorporated into the mix, and it also is. Basically, your character meets up with Sean and
Oh yeah,
and Becca.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
yeah.
Like that,
So
yeah.
she meets up with the assassins then. Okay.
Yeah. So they're all
'Cause
together.
I know she's on the outs from Abstergo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's like an assassin now, basically. Except for, I will say, they did alter their designs a little bit, and that kind of bothers me a little bit. But that's just that's longtime fan shit. Where, because like Stephen Merchant's character used to look like Stephen Merchant, he looks nothing like Stephen
Yeah.
Merchant anymore.
What? No. Why would they change that? I want
I
him to
don't
be
know,
a tall, lanky, gawky-looking dude.
And he still kind of is, but it's like his face is different. His hair's brown now; it's not like blonde anymore.
What?
And he wears like a jacket with like patches on the arms. Like he's a different guy
That
now,
fits.
basically.
That jacket fits.
Mhm.
Yeah,
The patches on the elbow, very British.
Yeah.
Very British.
Yeah. So Layla
Wait,
is
did
it
he
Layla,
dye
right?
his hair to hide his identity though? Like, I'm wondering if that's the case.
They that could be it, but they don't ever like specify that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
And that's a personal detail that they'll never get into, except in like an art book somewhere.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the modern day stuff is still it's kind of like blending, that Desmond story side of things with the Layla story of things, as kind of those characters now have all come together. Well, not Desmond, but like the crew around Desmond have now come together, to help Layla through kind of the how things left off in Odyssey, and it is still very much. Like I think Origins and Odyssey both were, in that like you get introduced to like the modern day stuff, you know, early-ish on in the game, but then you can basically hop right back into the Animus and basically play the whole rest of the game. But the end game does kind of like bring you back into the real world to deal with kind of some of those elements. And I thought in an interesting way. More than anything, I'm curious to see where the game goes from here now, really. With kind of the modern day stuff, because some of the ideas that get introduced in the last game a little bit with like the longevity of lifespans and stuff, kind of gets carried forward a little bit here, on this one, with a different character. So
Desmond survived.
I mean,
He's
like
now
they,
he's now the burned man from Fallout New Vegas Honest Hearts DLC.
we mentioned, I think in our last time, like they do keep bringing Nolan North back, in this game, in particular in a handful of audio logs, but that's maybe not the only place you'll see Desmond's character kind of stuff. So,
What?
not in a Fallout burned man ghoul kind of nature, per se, but
He wasn't a ghoul. He was the burned man. Just had horrific burns.
oh.
He wasn't a ghoul.
But yeah, it's so like the modern day stuff, very interesting, and yeah, I'm sure as a more, I would say, long term fan, than I am, certainly, Frank. I will be curious to kind of like pick your brain a little bit, maybe off camera at some point, about your thoughts on the ending there, where we can talk a little bit more in the spoiler side of things. But yeah, like have you gone and done a lot of the side stuff yet?
Yeah, yeah. There's everything I have left is basically just like open world activities and location stuff. And I
Hmm.
did so far at this point, I'm pretty much done. Like I did all the side stuff I wanted to do because there's the side stuff that's just like opening chests and like doing side mysteries and stuff like that. And then there was the stuff that would give me like good weapons or like it had like story stuff related. Like I did all that and like all the stuff that has like trophies
Hmm.
related. Or a lot of it because some of it takes forever. So
Yeah.
I got to the point where I did everything like I wanted to do and I'm pretty much done with it.
Hmm.
But it is still like a really great game and I think even at just a base level it's just fun to play. Like the combat's super fun and deep and like I enjoyed it and then the story ended up being really good. And I like with especially with the modern day stuff we're talking about, like I think that's the most interesting stuff they've done in the modern day since like three, maybe even like four. And I also there's no spoilers too, but there's threads they left open in like the past that I just thought they had abandoned and walked away from,
Hmm.
especially. But then they were like, "Oh, hey, we're like maybe gonna go back to some of that." And again, as like longtime fan, I'm like, "That's insane." I just like never expected them to like try to go back and like pick up threads that like they just like abandoned. Um, that's why I'm like, I think it's the most interesting stuff they've done in a really long time, like all around. One thing I going back to the like kind of the open world stuff and the trophies, like I do think it is a bit too big, and I do think
Hmm.
some of the trophies are just straight up ridiculous. But that's a Ubisoft problem. Like other Assassin's Creeds have had the exact same problem, where some of the like you'll get one or two trophies that are just ridiculous.
Yeah. I mentioned to you the other day when we were sitting down recording something, that right now I think on PSN profiles the rarest trophy I have, one of the like top 5 rarest trophies I have, is from Assassin's Creed, and it's like the one of catch every type of fish in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and it's like there's 19 fish, and it's like easy enough to do, but it is like you have to go out of your way to go and catch some of those fish, and certainly like using a guide helped and all that stuff. But yeah, it's just like, okay, yep, this is clearly the thing that people don't give a crap about and don't want to do in these games. So, yeah.
Yep.
You also have to solve the big puzzle of how to actually use the fishing line in Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Yeah, Cam.
So in Assassin's Creed Black Flag, the modern day
Mm-hmm.
stuff is you play somebody who has a weirdly deep, like high score, um, in the Animus program for beta testing this like new like basically they're using you playing through the Animus as footage for like proof of concept for like films and other stuff. Abstergo Entertainment's going to be doing that. Um, and you essentially get to play like a mini Ubisoft employee, basically, but
Yeah.
with like much greater implications. Does that character that you play in that come back in like in any of the other games, or is that just like they've stopped doing that? That's not going to be a thing anymore. Because you do some pretty nuts stuff in Black as that character.
Yeah,
That's true.
I don't remember like
Um,
because I only played Unity after that of like that line of games.
You fight an immortal soul that has entered into the digital space, and you thwart him from taking over the world with his dead wife.
I mean, yeah, I remember I played. Black Flag is actually the first Assassin's Creed I ever played, so like that was my introduction to the modern day stuff. Yeah, and it got me.
It's very different in other games.
Oh yeah, no. I learned that quickly because I joke that Black Flag tricked me into liking Assassin's Creed, and then I went back and played everything that had come before it and was like, I do not like this nearly as much as Black Flag. And then eventually finally got burnt out on Assassin's Creed 3. But of that era, I played Black Flag and then Unity. So I've not played Syndicate, I've not played Rogue. I feel like in Unity, like Unity was the most hands off on like the modern day stuff that I remember.
That was the worst they've ever done.
It was like
it pisses me off thinking about it.
Yeah, it was like you weren't even in the modern day. It was like you would occasionally get like glitches that would be like England through the years or wherever it was through the Paris through the
Paris
years.
through the years, yeah.
Well, they would they had like the webcam thing too. Like it was like one of the assassins was like talking to you over a Zoom call. Like they would hack in and they'd be like, "Oh my, I don't have a lot of time. This is what I need to tell you before they find me and root me out of the system and blah blah." But it was like you put the least amount of effort into this you ever like possibly could have.
Unity.
So all that to say, theoretically, you're. Well, I was gonna say theoretically, maybe you're the same Abstergo character in Unity and Black Flag, but I don't know.
Oh, maybe
you are in Rogue. Because in Rogue and Black Flag, it has the exact same mechanic of you walking around with like the iPad and you being an Abstergo.
Okay.
So I can only assume you're the exact same person. I don't think they ever specifically say that, but I was like, I think you're the same person. But
you're
then
the same
after,
person because it's the same project because. Through the Kenway line, they found that there was this sub-side stuff, and they're like, let's go ahead and just capture footage for that. It's good.
Oh,
go ahead.
Well, and then after that, I think they pretty much abandoned that idea of like game tester Abstergo thing. Although it could be the same person who's getting like hacked in like Unity, but I don't think they ever like specify that because they really they didn't put a lot of effort into that side of it.
Well, it's important to note that like Unity was originally going to be like a pure the entire concept was pure multiplayer Assassin's Creed.
Mm-hmm.
And
the co-op stuff, yeah.
Well, and the co-op stuff was the thing that was like it was going to be like that was going to be the big push. That was the big push.
That was like the beginning of the PS4 Xbox One gen. God, like
yeah,
that was the first year. That was 2014.
Yeah. Weird to think of like how much the Assassin's Creed stuff has changed just over that generation, I guess, to where we are now.
I am not
better.
It killed me. Unity is the one that turned me off to the series.
Oh yeah, I mean like I hate finished that game. Like I finished it just because I was like I'm gonna see this through, but I hate this game so very much. And I think like a lot of people had that reaction, and Ubisoft kind of heard that reaction, and obviously they took some time away to retool. Like Syndicate was too far gone, but they retooled everything else to come to Origins and all that stuff.
How'd they make the Victorian era Assassin's game boring?
Like, I mean, they were
like
If it was anything like Unity, it was because they decided to throw way too much stuff into like, you know, tie-in apps and stuff like that. I don't know.
I just I
I
like
mean, like,
I think that
I watched trailers for it and I'm like, how do I feel nothing? I've been wanting this for like since Assassin's Creed 1. Like, how am I not
Mhm.
wanting this at all? And honestly, I look back on it and I actually don't think it's Syndicate's fault at all. I think Unity had burnt me out so badly. I
yeah.
had been
yeah.
burned so badly by Unity that anything Assassin's Creed to me just like tastes, and it was definitely a problem trying to get into Origins. Like Assassin's Creed to me still kind of tastes like ash in the mouth, if that makes
Hmm.
any sense. Like it's just the memory I
Mm.
have of Unity was so bad that
Yeah.
it
I
has
mean, that,
just like it's just made that difficult. And so I look back on, and here's the thing, like I am a fan of Assassin's Creed 3, but it's really more for the story and the main character. I think Connor is
mhm.
like a lot of people have a lot of problems with Connor, but like I found Connor to be, especially in his reasoning and the cause in which he fought for and what he was doing, I felt was very good. Um, but like looking back, like I definitely have rose tinted glasses when it comes to the older games. If only because like Unity was so bad that I look back so fondly. Like I was so into Black Flag, it was insane. And like I'm like I miss loving Assassin's Creed the way that I used to.
Yeah, Unity burnt me out as well, and like I swore it off and was ready to like just never come back to it. And the only reason I did come back for Origins was our friend Yusuf Magid, who
Mm.
obviously now at Ubisoft, but I don't think he was at the time. But he talked about just how much he loved that game. Actually, he might have already been at Ubisoft at that point, but just how much like Origins meant to him. I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot, and I dove in, and it was especially tying into like the Caesar era of things. I was really interested in that sub side of things, but also just yeah, playing as like kind of
Bayek.
Egyptian, yeah, as
Yeah.
Bayek was cool, and then Odyssey was Greek, kind of that era was certainly right up my alley,
Mm.
and stuff like Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, and obviously the recent God of War really, I think, did a good job of preparing me for the Norse side of things
Mm.
in the latest Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Got a little bit more Norse than I anticipated, honestly.
Yeah, especially if you do like the kind of optional like dream stuff that you can
Mhm.
do where you're basically
Don't you
playing
go?
as Odin.
Oh yeah, I was about to say, don't you
Sorry.
go to Asgard at one point?
Yeah, yeah. You
And
basically
it's
yeah. Go ahead, Frank.
sorry, I was just gonna say it's basically like playing God of War Ragnarok. Like I feel like walking around, I feel like they were so inspired by 2018 God of War, and I feel like that's almost the entire reason they put that in. Like, I mean, I'm sure they probably maybe were already working on it or already had plans, but like when you're walking around, I don't know if you got this, but it felt like they were going for God of War, like 2018 God of War, especially like with the tree and the house. Like I'm talking about Jotunheim, I guess specifically too.
Yeah, Jotunheim in particular, I thought I didn't get God of War vibes for it. So I guess a
Mm,
little bit because it is like the snowy area. But Jotunheim actually in particular, I thought of Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice a lot more,
mm, mm,
specifically because they do some really cool stuff with like optical illusions, and
mm,
that's how like some of the like chests and even side little missions are hidden in there. Is like you have to look at stuff from a very particular point of view, which was very much one of the like side sections of Senua's Sacrifice was like you have to look through this very particular thing to kind of see the crows or whatever. There was that same mechanic in the Jotunheim section. So yeah, but it certainly all. As I hopped into God of War 2018 a week or two ago, just to like have some fun with that game again. I can certainly kind of feel the vibes of kind of the snowy stuff compared to the Jotunheim there. And then Asgard is just like, okay, this is a very different take on Asgard from the MCU take, but it's also still
mm,
kind of the MCU take in that you have like the Rainbow Bridge and that kind of and the big golden towers and stuff. But yeah,
mm.
very cool. Any last thoughts there, Frank?
Yeah, because I thought that was kind of interesting to see not only that they included that, which I didn't really expect or really think about, but that is also kind of building off what they did in Odyssey,
Hmm.
specifically in the DLCs. The one DLC pack got a lot more mystical, and you end up going from I forget what the first world is, and then the second one is the underworld, and you go talk to Hades, and then the third world is Atlantis, and you go talk to Poseidon. And so I thought it was kind of like really cool how they did that. And then I thought it was interesting how they kind of incorporated that more into like the actual main base game. And they even found like a good reason for why that is kind of the way it is. But so I just thought it was kind of more cool world building stuff that you get to see, again, as you kind of play all of them. It's kind of cool to see them continuing to do shit like that.
Yeah, in particular, I thought it was cool when you can start piecing together the Asgard stuff with the Isu stuff with the like
Yeah.
modern day as well as like during Eivor's time like side of
Yeah.
things. Like there were moments where I was like 110 hours into the game as I'm entering the end game, I'm like, how did I not piece together that character and the other character were the same guy like this whole time?
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool.
I see, because I find that fascinating, and I know this is probably what we'll get into more like off mic maybe, but like I went and did all that first part before I went to the Asgard stuff,
Mm-hmm.
so I already kind of like
Oh, okay.
knew, and I went and did that, and then it was like way more exposition, and I was like, oh, I knew it, and I was like, but because of that, I was like onto him the whole time,
Yeah.
like I was like, I'm up to you. I know you're up to no good. Like,
Yep.
I don't know, but it was just fascinating. I just thought so. That's one of the things I'm curious about is like the order in which you do certain things and how it might spoil certain things that you
Mhm.
might do.
Yeah.
So I just think that's kind of interesting about the story too. And in some ways, I'm like, why did they let you do that? Like, why don't they give you a perfect way to play it? Like,
Yeah. I think that is enough on Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I'm glad you're enjoying it. It's one of those like I'll be tempted to maybe come back for like some of the season pass stuff. I have not got the season pass, but like if it comes on sale at some point and I find myself like feeling the itch, maybe I'll head back to it. But let us turn our gaze over. Cam and I have been playing Cyberpunk, so let us switch over to that. I'm playing with some stuff on the OBS, so I've got now a picture of Judy Alvarez up in the box next to me.
I can't.
And I
can't stand this Pan Am disrespect. I don't like it.
That's what's up. Pan Am.
I mean,
well, I'll be honest.
I
I tried dating Judy first because I hadn't met Pan Am yet, and she's
Yeah.
just like, "Cool, thanks, dude." And it's like, "Cool, all right, yeah."
yeah. So
Friendship, what up?
Oh,
Friendships are
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, so we'll dive a little bit more into this, I guess, but just as a for me, so I just finished. I've finished the game now on Series X, and I was playing as a female Corpo V. So
Interesting.
Judy was right up my alley.
There you go.
When I play it again on PlayStation and I do like male no bad, I think is what I'm going to try and do. That's going to be my Pan Am run.
That's a
Because the relationships are tied to some of your gender selections. It's not just like, hey, everybody, it's a love fest in 2077. so yeah, that's in particular that's why I have Judy pulled up, because that was who I romanced in the game. But yeah, so where are you at, Cam, with Cyberpunk?
So I have. So well, first off, I want to say I kind of want to address a couple of things at the top, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah.
When it comes to the game, I know that there's been a lot of talk. Without a doubt, like the issues with on base level consoles, glitches, problems with like maybe skirting that through certification, getting it removed from the PlayStation Store so they could legally refund people, all that sort of stuff. Like I do fully anticipate that like 6 months to a year from now, this game will be in like a much better state. Part of me wishes they had just delayed it to that point, but it is what it is.
Yeah, Logan and I talked a lot about like all of the Cyberpunk stuff. We recorded admittedly before Cyberpunk got delisted. I'm sure that will be like the main topic on this week's That News You Care About. But last week's That News You Care About was like everything up through Cyberpunk basically like having their mea culpa messaging of like, we screwed up, sorry, feel free to try and get refunds. And yeah, they're like the fall from grace of CD Projekt has been, certainly enthralling to watch on this. But it is also like a years long story with how they've been handling some of this stuff. But yeah, I ultimately, like, I tweeted this out the other when I beat the game. When all was said and done, I had like a ton of like Fallout-esque kinds of bugs, but the game hard crashed on me only 3 times. On Xbox Series X, so playing the Xbox One version, and because it stuck in my head just because of how bad the performance issues were earlier this year, Ori and the Will of the Wisps on Xbox, on my base Xbox One, crashed 7 times for me. So like, and Ori and the Will of the Wisps, as beautiful as that game is doing a lot less than Cyberpunk is. So the fact that game, that I had more issues with that game, is, at least to my experience, says a little bit about kind of how I felt about Cyberpunk's issues. I was very fortunate, and I joked about it with Logan, where it's like, I didn't want to talk about on the podcasts that I was having like a good, like, I wasn't having issues because I didn't want to jinx it. And then sure enough, as soon as we did, that was when I started getting the crashes. But yeah, it's unfortunate, certainly. I'm very sorry to hear that. You're playing on Xbox or PlayStation?
You're on PS4, right?
I'm on a PS4 Pro. I will say, like, the crashes I get are like understandable. When I say that, I mean, I know that I pushed it too hard.
Uh-huh.
I was driving down the street, guys.
I don't think you understand. There's a motorcycle that is essentially a piece for piece replica of Kanada's motorcycle from Akira.
Love it. Yeah.
And it goes almost 200 miles an hour. And I know this because I constantly drive it as fast as I possibly can, which is weird because normally that's not how I am in games like this. In open world games, I'm usually like, I'm not like that. Like, and it's not about getting from point A to point B. I just really love that I get to see my. I wanted to make like somebody who looked more like me, like fatter or jollier, as it were. 'Tis the season. I want to make myself a bit more jolly and more rotund, but they don't give you that option, unfortunately. And so,
they don't?
Nope, they don't. You can't be. They don't. You are not allowed to choose your dimensions, and it does make sense in that, like, if you have an open world and you let people modify their dimensions, it does cause problems, as people learned when they implement those mods in The Witcher 3 on PC. There's tons of like mods for that game, but it also, like, I've seen people play it with like body distortion mods, so that they make a fat Geralt. And
okay.
But the thing about that is, like, it does distort stuff in the engine because it's not designed around that. And so when they made, like, I see what CD Projekt Red did to keep people from, like, an already very, and I'll use this term, it is a sensitive world that has been put together, and if you push it too hard, it will break, which is unfortunate. But, like, if you're used to Fallout games and other games like this, you are understanding that, like, this happens. I still think Fallout 4 has broken me. Fallout 4 has apparently, like, Fallout series as a series has broken me at this point because I did not, like, look at any of these bugs as anything that ruined the game for me. But hearing people say that the bugs have ruined the game for them when it comes to, like, one-odd characters, textures not loading correctly or something like that, and they're like, yeah, like this, and it's like, I pull way differently from that. But I will say that I crash the game. Whenever I crash the game, it's usually because I have gone past the buffering on my motorcycle, and it's trying to load all the skyscrapers and people. And there have been times where, like, it's loaded people, it's generated the people that are supposed to be there, and they're in the street, and I mow through them, and trying to process the ragdoll effects of everything that's going on has crashed it. When I have literally charged up and, like, leapt up onto a new sector of the city, and I'm surrounded by enemies, and I start murdering them all, and, like, they're, like, the effects of everything, like, that has crashed it. I know when I have never had a point where, or I've noticed like it's stuttered, and I was like, oh,
Hmm.
here comes the crash, and it crashes. Like there's stuff like that, and other bugs and stuff that I've noticed too. But I will say the other thing I wanted to talk about is also I think there's been a lot of people who misunderstood what a cyberpunk world is. And I want to say it like this, and it's important to note that like this is a very sensitive subject, and I really want to come to it with care because I really care about the people who are affected by this. And being a part of and being a part of the same community as them is it's very important that I want to take that because or it's I want it to make sure that people understand that I am approaching this with care and love, and it's about the trans representation in the game.
Hmm.
There is between like genital parts being swapped. You can have no genitals, some genitals, whichever. Like there is like there are two penises options in the game, and then there is a vaginal option. Um, which like maybe there should be more options for vaginal options, or maybe like there should only be a single option for a penis. Like I don't know who's going to choose the smaller penis. I didn't.
I feel like there didn't need to be any of those options in the game. I feel like they haven't added anything to the story apart from
It,
headlines that they got beforehand. Um,
it's clearly
When I
breaking the
take
game because they have to render all that.
when you take off your pants, it has to render it has to render my
I
dongle.
mean, yeah, or if you're having those issues where your dongle just clips through the pants,
Oh, is that a
like
problem for
that's
some people?
cert. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
there were a
or the
lot of
pants just don't load.
yeah, there were a lot of those issues. Yeah, the pants apparently. I saw basically the idea that when you're driving around in third person mode, you're typically not wearing pants because character models were popping out of the car on T pose or something like that, and they were just
Mhm.
naked from the the waist down.
Oh boy.
Um,
Okay.
but also, yeah,
That's been a good.
one of the common glitches and issues of kind of the early game was penises clipping through the clothing in in the mirrors or something like that, or in the menu
Mm.
screens. I didn't have any of those issues, but like yeah, ultimately it was just kind of like I don't know why such a big deal was made of any of that kind of stuff
Yeah, I don't know
beforehand
why.
because
Like
it
it was.
doesn't add anything to a gameplay element. It adds something to maybe a few cutscenes, I guess, as you're going through. If you're romancing characters, if you're sleeping with like the dolls in the game, which is
Yeah. No.
weird because it very much took me back to the Joss Whedon show Dollhouse. Anytime like that kind of subplots and
Yeah.
storylines come up, but yeah, I like
Oh. Yeah.
the
What I
trans.
wanted to.
Yeah,
Oh, I wanted to
go
say.
ahead.
Sorry. Let me finish. When it comes to the trans issue, so it's important to note that, and this also is like can also be applied to some complaints about Asian representation in the game as well, and how it's homogenized Asian rather than anything really distinct or unique. Um, Cyberpunk as a not just an aesthetic but as a genre is made and designed in a way that if you are upset or offended by representation of something in a cyberpunk genre like film or book or game in this case, that's good because a cyberpunk world is not something that we aspire to. It's literally designed to show the worst parts and ways of how a capitalistic society takes something and just turns it into just human, like emotionless, inhumane, like inhuman, not inhumane, but inhuman uh, product for buying and making purchase and gaining capital from. So there's a type of vending machine that is basically selling um, something. I have not bought anything from it, so I don't know like what kind of drinks it's offering. But essentially, the idea is that It is something having to do with chromosomes and altering, like with some stuff about gender stuff. Specifically, it has a female model that has a prominent like outline of a penis, and
Hmm.
it has like a lot of people. One of the reviews I was reading was they were like, I really wish that there had been an option for like my V to like say something about that. But I think that it's important to note that the representation that you see in a cyberpunk world should never be good as like a theme and as a like a rule of the world, um, because it's contrary to the point of what cyberpunk is supposed to do as a literary genre. That being said, you also could be doing something different in this game. They could have done something different.
Hmm.
They could have made these out like they could have made in-game outreaches to convey different like a difference in it. Having V say something about it when they see that. Uh, like not treating some of the stuff like GTA ads that are just meant to gross you out and shock you, but also have some actual real commentary on it because it's part of what's going right now in our society. Um, and I think that would have been way cooler. I think that would have been way more awesome. But I also I'm torn between like I want that like positive representation and like I want that good thing, but I also know that it's contrary as a genre and why it may not be the prerogative and priority of a creative team when putting that together.
It's
I do
like
not think that if you're offended or grossed out by it, that there's anything wrong with that. I think that's the actual point of it. But
I
saying
mean,
that, I don't know if this team at CD Projekt Red should have even touched or broached that subject whatsoever. Sorry,
my
that's
issue
that's
is
it.
that it's just not even saying anything on the thing. It is just like it's
Yeah.
imagery in the game, and the story. Both in both issues in the trans representation and also the ethnic representation because it's Asian representation, it's Hispanic representation, with kind of Jackie and the the language of Night City maybe, is that it's there, but it's not saying anything one way or another. It's CD Projekt put it in the game and like almost consciously tried not to say anything about it.
Yeah.
Either in having your characters react to it or like really just having the world react to it. It is just like,
Yeah.
and the conversation out there being like, oh, we lost Frank. So sorry for the video version, everything being all messed up, as it always is whenever Frank drops off the call. He'll be back shortly. But the fact that like all that's in there, I mean, I found myself multiple times throughout the game kind of thinking like, yep, this game, especially in a year where we got Ghost of Tsushima, that made
Hmm.
strides to deal with representation. I hear what you're saying about like like you shouldn't want the cyberpunk world, and it's fine if that is intentional in the cyberpunk kind of aesthetic, but it just didn't even feel
In
intentional
genre,
here.
yeah.
It felt like
Mhm.
Polish developers that are incredibly white, and have a history of obviously with The Witcher, being a very white game, not just not knowing and not trying to do the research into other cultures and what a natural evolution of those cultures might look like in a cyberpunk world. And so it like everything just feels like the most tropey and the most stereotypical kind of stuff,
Yeah.
but without making a point of the fact that it's the most tropey and the most stereotypical stuff. It's just
Yeah.
like, it's just that's what this world is. And it's like you could do that, but you could do it by saying something, and I
Yeah.
feel like that's where Cyberpunk falls short, certainly for me,
Hmm.
at least in terms of
I agree.
that kind of conversational
And
elements
yeah,
of it, is that
I would.
they're just not trying to say anything with the game. They put the game in there, and the over sexualized nature of the trans stuff, as well as dildos being everywhere in the game or whatever. It's just like
That's just
I
the
don't-
future of pegging. The future is pegging, dude. That's just what
Yeah.
it's all about.
Yeah, I like I've seen you
But I agree. I agree.
tweeting
I
that
think the
that
fact
kind of
you
stuff out
can-
there so many times. So the,
They have so
so
many
you
dildos
diving
lying
in
around,
first,
but you never have the option to get pegged in the game. I agree. That's a problem.
sure. Like yeah, it. See, there's a dichotomy to like you wanting to start the conversation on this very serious tone about
I'm sorry.
representation, and then also the Twitter Cameron that has been going on about pegging for the last week and a half, in response to the conversation of things.
Just a blessing.
There's two sides
Just a
to every
blessing.
coin.
Yeah,
Just
but,
a blessing. That's it. Just
But
a
since
blessing.
since I have notifications on for you, I see it every time you tweet about it. I'm just
It's
like,
only been a couple. Like
yeah.
I have not gone old Twitter Cameron where I suddenly like adopted as a brand for me.
mhm.
It's just me poking fun at Blessing. But Blessing has stated on stream that
Yeah.
he is pro pegging, so like we're fine.
There you go.
Anyway, sorry.
But so
yeah.
all that stuff out of the way, how far along in Cyberpunk are you, Cam?
Oh,
And
I just
and yeah,
before we get into
Go ahead.
that, I'll launch into that right away. But I wanted to say that I 100% agree with you. I wish they would have done that. I wish that there had been more to say, and especially when it comes to ethnic representation. When you think of Cyberpunk was manufactured and put together in the 80s as a context to 80s corporate culture.
hmm
And what you're seeing is an evolution of 80s corporate culture. Now, there has been, since the 80s, there's been pushback about representation, inclusion, sensitivity, sensitivity trainings and all sorts of stuff to, like, make people more aware about the greater diversity than just basic blandness. So I think that when we talk about the ethnic stuff, you're getting into, well, how do we make sure it's authentically cyberpunk versus how do we make sure that we're authentically doing proper representation, and they clash. And I don't know if there's a good way of doing that. That's my final note on that one. Maybe the final note, maybe the final solution is just include the inclusivity anyway, but I digress. Where I'm at in the game, though, is I finished chapter 1, put the controller down, cried a little bit to myself because of how chapter 1, like the events of chapter 1, I was doing everything I could thinking that a certain thing was a determinant based on my decisions and preparations. And so we spent the first 15 hours of Cyberpunk 2077 running around Watson doing everything I possibly could. Maybe I became something of a crime fighter. But I basically like ran all around Watson. I was like, man, this world is pretty big. Like I can't, like, this is crazy. Like I love how all over the place this place is. And then I realized, oh, it's just one part of the map. Cool.
Yeah.
Cyberpunk is massive. It's enormous. Night
Yeah.
City is a true metropolitan behemoth. Love it. So I ran around Watson, then I did the first chapter, and then it opened up the game for me. And I've explored every section. I did the tarot mission, completed that. That took me all around Night City proper.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I finally, that was like one of the things I was doing as cleanup. Like I got a handful of the tarot things. So tarot in the game, for you, Frank, there's basically like graffiti strewn about Night City in various locations, and it's like it's a collectible effectively. You can go scan 20 different tarot cards around the map, and
cool.
and then turn them into your tarot loving fortune telling friend Misty, voiced by the same actress who did Futaba and Jessie. So every time I just talk to her, that's like I'm like, she had a really great 2020 between Persona 5 Royal and Final Fantasy 7 Remake and this game.
She is now many people's wives, and she doesn't even know.
Yeah.
So Misty is who she plays in this game, and Misty is, what's cool though is I realized depending on where you go, when you go to see her in the game, because she'll read you tarot readings whenever you ask.
Does that actually do anything, or is that just like flavor?
It sets up the progress of how
she's
the
kind of
chapters go.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she's
So-
predicting your future a little bit.
Yeah, and it's cool.
It's one
It's
of those
cool.
kind of flavor texts in the game.
Yep, it's fun. It's really cool, but it
Yeah.
also like Misty's a very special character, and like from my perspective, because not only is she Jackie's girlfriend, but she's also like one of the only actual spiritual people in Night City. Um,
Hmm.
like she's not religious
I
or anything. There's plenty of quote unquote religious people in Night City, but she is the only spiritual person, like somebody who's actually like seeking to be more in tune with herself, the universe, and all that stuff. But it makes her a very distinct character, and she's voiced by a wonderful voice actress, and is
hmm
such a kind and wonderful character in the game itself that um, that I love her. I just think that I think the world of her as a character. And so I wanted to do the tarot mission because I wanted to have more interaction with her, and it's really cool. But so I did that. But so I've explored it, but I basically got to the point where I've done
Oh,
I
real
finished.
quick, just
Yeah.
I want to throw this out there. Like back, I don't know, like probably 5-10 minutes ago, I switched the image to Panem. By the way, so
Oh, cool.
Thank you.
so Panem is our kind of our figurehead now in the image. But real quick before diving into kind of
Oh yeah.
other things you've done, there's I will be very curious, and I don't want to get into it for like spoiler stuff here, but there is a particular string of side missions that touches on, in particular, like born again Christianity. That I will be very interested to pick your
Oh,
brain on.
I've done. I have to go to the TV studio in that
Okay,
storyline,
that's
and
that was like probably the most weirdly intense mission, the one that you're about to do.
yeah, yeah.
And I was like,
I put it off because I'm like I like just dealing with the first half of that was just like really out there for me.
yeah,
And it's pretty nuts. But so there's that. Oh, by the way, I am playing masculine v nomad background.
okay, yeah.
Um,
So that's what I'm gonna do on the when I do my PlayStation run of the
yeah,
game.
that one it's been really awesome. Because if you increase your
Did you find
technical,
Alana Pierce?
I did find Alana Pierce. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
No. Like. I like she's like that's actually a really fun little side quest. I don't know how it is for if it's Nomad exclusive because it has to do with the intro, but
She mentioned kind of pre-launch that it was tied specifically to the Nomad.
yeah,
And like that's one of the things I'm most actually interested in like seeing will be like the other intros. Because in my head I had built it up that it was going to be similar to Dragon Age Origins,
mm,
in that like yeah, like ultimately you're going to get to that like the point where every character whatever your prologue is kind of gets to a point. I was surprised by like how quickly the corporo thing is before you dive into like what I imagine is like main game proper. Because
yeah,
it was like super quick, and then I was just suddenly in dealing with Night City stuff. So I look
yeah.
forward to hopping into the nomad lifestyle and seeing
Nomad's
like
similar in that it's
how
not very
much
long.
more of that game. Okay.
It's very short. The prologue is always very short, from what I understand.
Okay.
Um, but I think it's cool because it's how your character meets Jackie for the first time.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
like
See, like in mine, like he already like as the corpo. I already knew Jackie. Like I knew Jackie from working in the corpo world. So like I go meet him as an informant at the bar, and like we've known each other for a while now.
yeah, and I know in the Street Kid, like he's known Jackie for a while. And then I think in the Nomads one is the only one that he's not known him before because Nomad's coming into Night City for the first time. And like
Hmm.
it starts off with you guys like doing a job together, and it's super
Okay.
cool.
Yep.
Immediately, like Jackie's such an endearing character.
Yeah.
I love Jackie. Um, Jackie Wells. When you go to Afterlife and he tells the bartender about like what he wants his drink to be,
Hmm.
so good.
Hmm.
A little splash of love. So good.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. But I've been really fond of how they've implemented how your prologue background actually applies to certain situations.
Hmm.
When I was doing the Pan Am side quest line, because I finished her side quest last night,
Yeah. Okay.
which by the way is awesome, so good.
Yeah.
Uh,
That was probably the most fun in that because it gives you different mechanics to the game that like I mean there's like on rail shooter elements of her stuff with like running turrets and stuff like that. And I just enjoyed kind of the yeah that side that thread.
yeah, getting out of it's so different from other Night City stuff.
Hmm.
The Badlands, but the Badlands is also just such a fun area to like. It's a massive playground, open air, like blue sky, clouds. It's awesome. But what I really loved about it was uh, having the nomad background gave me options that I know wouldn't be there otherwise. Like it's that way for
Yeah.
every single, like
Yeah.
all the backgrounds have that option. And
Yeah.
depending, and I have no doubt that when you're dealing with corpo people, your corpo background has a lot of options.
Yeah,
Uh,
the main thrust of the narrative being like Arasaka, you as the corpo used to work for Arasaka, and so you definitely kind of have a whole bunch of corpo stuff to respond to in
ooh,
kind
yeah,
as a result.
especially with Arasaka. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Um, no, I love like being a nomad was awesome because like I had all these like dialogue options to kind of like get a different reaction from other characters, but also it uh Dakota, who's the fixer out in there, out in
yeah,
the Badlands. I found out that like the way she addresses you and talks to you is different than the way if you have other backgrounds because
mm,
she's a former nomad herself. Like you meeting other nomads in this game and talking to them about nomad stuff, and you realize like you know the nomad culture in itself is starting to become corporatized,
yeah,
and it's like dealing with um the Aldecados in the Badlands reveals way more about V's past than I was expecting. In regards to his nomad background, and I'm curious. I'm wondering if that might be the same thing with the other backgrounds, depending on who you're dealing with. But uh, I just have like
yeah.
a deep love of what I've been playing through. So I'm at the point now where there's going to be a parade happening
Hmm.
as part of
Okay,
that storyline, and then I have to go meet the Haitians in the other part of the storyline, and then I finish the third branch with the Moxes very first because
yeah,
I
okay,
guess it's the shortest. So also I maxed out my my
yeah.
street cred.
Yeah, I've maxed out street cred quite a while ago. I want to say I'm like level. I finished the game at like level 37 or 38 or something. In terms of that, one of the things I like,
Trevor, where I'm at right
yeah.
now, I'm level 34. That probably tells you how much side stuff I've been doing.
I mean, that doesn't surprise. Like, there's also like you say the parade. The parade was the last of that thread of storyline that I
Oh, is
did.
it okay?
Um, yeah. I mean, of the because yeah, when the story opens up, you basically get like three kind of like storylines to follow. And that was the last of those three that I did. I did the Mox and then I did the Haitians and then I did that one. Um, and
Are they
then
all
you-
similar
then it,
length then? Like they're just a few missions?
yeah, more, I mean more or less. It's basically the game. The game ends up being like way shorter than I thought. Apart from doing all the
Mm.
side stuff and doing like Pan Am side stuff and Judy's side stuff, and I don't know if you've encountered the cop and done his side stuff, um,
No,
or any of the Johnny Silverhand side stuff, basically. But yeah, like
I've not unlocked any of
the
those yet. No.
the main kind of like structure of the game is like you do kind of act one and then act two kind of splits out into those like three threads. And then like act three is basically like, okay, once those three are done, you're basically in the end game, of the main
Oh,
narrative thrust. So yeah, like I finished, since I did the parade kind of last of those three, I finished the parade and then like I don't know, like 3 hours later, I was like, "Oh, I'm at the final mission." Like I got the like, "You're at the point of no return,"
what?
and I was like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna go do a whole bunch of other side stuff." Like, if you really just mainline the game, you can finish the main game pretty quickly. But honestly, like the side stuff is where I have so much more fun in the game. Like
Mm.
doing all that Pan Am stuff and doing all the Judy stuff. and enjoying the time with all the other characters, going around and like doing even the boxing stuff around the city, and kind of like encountering those different little missions was like that's where there's a lot more cool, interesting, fun stuff in the game for me than like I was drawn way more to that stuff than I was drawn to like the Johnny Silverhand side of the story.
That's kind of how I've been playing it out. So yeah.
Yeah. But one of the things I absolutely like, despite being endgame, I want to say I have maybe $200,000, and I admittedly bought like $150,000 car at some point, but like the economy in this game is just like absurd. Like I don't understand how people buy all of the cars in this game, and that's also one of just the absurd things. Is like every fixer in the game is trying to sell you like 7 different cars, and the fact that they're like set up then as side missions to like go in and like go buy the car. That's a side mission. It's like that's not a side mission. It's just like GTA has these things just hidden. Exactly. Like GTA has them like you just go to a website and buy them. It's like, why didn't they just do that? I have no idea. Like, especially because like enough of the side quests give you other vehicles and that kind of stuff. So I was like, I want to say like, even without buying the one car I bought, I have 6 vehicles that I can just like call to me at a whim or whatever. But I did get a pretty sexy blue like sports car. That's what I race around the city in. You have your Akira vehicle. I have my blue sports car that I have a great time. I feel like I can't really race it around the city though. It is like when I get out to the Badlands, that's when I really start hitting like top speeds and stuff like that.
That's why you stick with the motorcycle, man. You can just bob and weave throughout the city.
So yeah, I mean, I definitely, I definitely enjoy a couple of the motorcycles that I ended up picking up throughout the game as well.
I think one of the things that they're really good. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, like, one of the things you mentioned, kind of getting like being out in the Badlands and stuff like that. Since I was a corpo, going out and doing Pan Am stuff was really the first time that took me outside of Night City and took me into the Badlands. And it was cool, kind of doing that, that and getting that exposure. And I will say that like the game probably has the best use of at least in like certain areas of the Badlands of like, hey, there's nothing out here, so don't waste your time off the beaten path, that I've ever seen in one of these kinds of games. Is that like there are just giant swaths of the Badlands that are landfills that are just like a pain in the ass to try and drive around. Even if you're on a motorcycle, they're like pretty much impassable if you're in a sports car or even in just any other car.
If you're in the southwest part of the map, it's just all landfill.
Yeah. So it's basically just like, hey, don't go out looking for anything out here because it's going to be a nightmare to try and drive around that stuff. And I was like, cool, noted. I'm just going to stay on the roads around this area then. I'm going to not drive through that stuff.
Nope, because I tried and I launched myself pretty far. Because I hit a like a box of something or like a fridge or something out there, and just like, just flew right off, like right out of there. Man, no. I was gonna say, if there's one thing I will say, Night City, like I said it, like you're not supposed to want to live in Cyberpunk, but man, do they make it fun to run around in a Cyberpunk world?
Yeah,
which I think is just like it's just, and I don't mean that in the genre. I mean that in CD Projekt Red has built an open world that maybe not, like, it might not be groundbreaking in any sort of way, but man, has it been fun to run around in that city.
I had a specific turning point where I had that, like, and for me it was because I was doing a lot of stuff like quick hacks kind of early on, and I'd be like, okay, I'm trying to be stealthy. I'm trying to like sneak around this stuff. And eventually, like, I started getting like really good quick hacks. where I could like short circuit somebody and just like take out like half their health. I basically just do that twice and boom, that person's down, and I can kind of move on to the next person. Or in particular, contagion is another quick hack that I use a ton, where it's basically like it poisons a person and it like the poison travels to anybody nearby, and so you can like take out like 3 people like in, if they're all like huddled up together. And so like once I started getting that, but then also I got I got some like weapons very late in the game. In particular, I got like a gold plated baseball bat from like a it's like a
Nice.
legendary iconic from a character that I kind of met late in the game, and just I got to the point where I was like, I'm just gonna run through and just beat the crap out of people with this. I'm gonna like just run in like guns blazing, but really just bat swinging, and so like once I got like to that point where I was like leveled up that much and could just like plow through, like yeah, there was a ton of fun there. I until I hit that point though, I was getting really annoyed in combat because like the game didn't do it. It didn't do a great job of like telling me where I was getting hit from. And then just sometimes I would just like one hit would kill me, and I'd be like, "What the like?" I didn't even know a guy was like fighting me, and so stuff like that, like I would get annoyed by, but yeah, like once I hit that turning point of like, okay, now I am like a god, net runner in this city. Like, yeah, let's just go, let's just have some fun. The one exception was like the end fight of the parade that you're coming up on, like, was a nightmare for me. Like I had kind of like crossed the threshold at that point going into that fight, and I get into that like the boss fight of that section. I was like, what? Like I used like all of the ammo I had like on the weapons that I had, and the guy was just wrecking shop on me, and he was like taking me out, and I was having to constantly like just like sneak away, heal myself, and then try and like re-engage. And so it was like there was like weird difficulty spikes like that, and I encountered that in like a couple of the side things as well, but like that ended up being like the hardest fight in the game, like compared to even the final fights of the game, where I was just like, and I think part of it was like I wound up in a very enclosed space compared to a couple like the later game boss fights where I was a little more open. But yeah, it was just like I took me by surprise because like the mission threat level on that was like very low. Basically, it was like super in the gray, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna have a problem. And then this guy just started like eating my lunch. I was like, holy crap, what the hell?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a similar moment with a baseball bat with the mantis blades. Did you ever get those?
I've gone with gorilla arms instead. I think I'll do mantis. Like my corpo female V playthrough, like I was like a good on the up and up kind of person. I tried to help people out. I was playing the good V kind of thing. I think when I do male nomad, I'm gonna be like more ruthless and more just like violent. Like everything I was doing a lot of non-lethal stuff in my playthrough. And so yeah, like the mantis blades, I was like, that is the opposite of non-lethal. So I look forward to exploring those in a next run.
Yeah, no, I am very much like if it's like a person or a guard or like a non, like if they're not my enemy, I'm like I try to be passive with them. I try to like knock them out. If you are if you remember like the wraiths or like Corporal Militech or something like that, like no mercy. And I do a lot of like so I only ever pull out the mantis blades when somebody's gotten close, like too close, and I don't have a place to run away, because you can just like leap with them, and like your charge attack is literally to leap at somebody, and it is so good. And
Nice.
the mantis blades themselves are just like like spam attacks, just like I don't know what I'm doing. It's very
That was
cool.
honestly like that was probably the turning point, was really when I finally had like enough money to upgrade a lot of my cyberware. and like upgraded to like a cyber deck where I could get like 6 hacks going and get my double jump legs and get the gorilla arms and just a whole bunch of that stuff. That was probably when I was like, okay, now I feel great in the combat of this game.
I need to go pick up new cyberware because I've been running a rare one with 4 slots, and I need to upgrade it to the epic or possibly legendary one now that I have enough cash.
Yeah.
Because I did a big sink. Money sink for me was a $63,000 jump implant. Or no, the jump implant's $45,000, and then a $63,000 because I actively like use pistols outside of using a certain character's sniper rifle, iconic sniper rifle.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've just been just absolutely just like I came into here as a nomad gunslinger, and that's very much been what I've been. Like, you start off with the revolver as a nomad. I don't know if it's the case for other ones, but I've just been this big iron on my hip gunslinger in Night City. Like, you can take the nomad out of the Badlands, but you can't take the Badlands out of the nomad. And it's just been I've just been like this. Like, he's I play it less morally gray. Like, if I can make a better choice or I can do something to help people, I'll do it. With like the cyber psychosis side quests, I am doing the knocking them out. At one point, I went to one on accident that was a very high risk for my level, and eventually I ran out of pistol ammo for my I specifically always have a sidearm, or at the time I always had a sidearm that was specialized for taking people out alive, and I ran out of ammo, and I was just like, well, I guess I'll just have to we'll just have to fisticuffs, and I got good enough to the point because she kept murdering me, but eventually I got used to like what her attack pattern was, and I put much.
I was gonna say, was it the one in the like the bloody ritual one?
No, that one I did not have a hard time with. The hard one I had was
she messed me up so much.
Yeah.
Like even when I would she was one of the first ones I found, and she just like was destroying me. I was like, all right, well, I'm just gonna come back to this later. And then later, when she was like very low in the threat, she was still destroying me. So that was where I finally got to the point where I was just like, all right, I'm just gonna not try and like play this like clever. I'm just gonna beat the shit out of her.
Yeah. No, it was the wedding on the pier.
I don't know if I found that one because I've only found like half of them.
Okay. There's one where it's a wedding on a pier, and she is like this like lady who just goes all out on you, and I'm too low level for this. Her bullet, like one bullet from her pistol was taking me down below half health, so I couldn't get shot twice. But eventually she ran out of ammo. And then I ran out of ammo. And then we punched each other on the rooftop of a banana stand or a restaurant at the pier. And so on this roof of this restaurant at the pier, I'm fisticuffing this lady, and eventually I finally knock her out, and I knock her out and punch her, and she's on the edge of the roof, and I knock her out, and she falls down very dramatically, and it's like, yeah. And then I'm like, wait, there's a lot of blood there. Did I kill her on accident? Did I knock her out only to knock her off the roof and kill her? No, she was still alive.
Okay.
Or at least counted as alive. So,
nice.
Yeah, I was like, oh no.
She had a pulse. It's fine.
Yeah, there were definitely a couple of those where I was like, oops, I accidentally killed them. Let me reload that save so I can get like the better reward for not killing them.
And then I'm just going to, this isn't a spoiler because it's like a side mission. I'm just going to say it. The iconic weapon you get for beating her is a dildo club. And I 100%.
So I definitely haven't found that one.
I definitely have used that on the other ones, because you want to know how I beat the woman in the blood ritual woman? With the dildo club.
With the dildo club?
Yep.
There you go.
I beat her. I beat her into submission.
I also haven't
with the
found
dildo club.
I have not found the talking gun.
Neither have I yet.
Which is another curious. That's one I've heard about. That's it's almost like Clippy, but with a gun, or at least that's what I've seen people kind of memeing from it. But yeah, I have not encountered that gun either. These are the kinds of things I enjoy about these kinds of games, are talking to friends about like their stories in the game far more than like the actual base story of the game. Especially because again, not getting into spoilers, but when I finished the game, there are specific choices that you make specifically in the end game related to a number of things. And so I'm like making these choices and I'm like, I have in my head why I'm making these choices. And then like the game ends and credits start rolling and it does that Fallout type thing where there's like epilogue. It's not like here's a screenshot and we're going to tell you about what happened, in this encampment or something like that. It's characters calling you and like leaving voicemails for you or something like that and kind of like telling what they're going to be doing. And like a couple of those just immediately undercut what I was trying to like do when I was making my choices in the end game. I was like, boo, 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 boo to that. So it'll be interesting to see what other choices I can make and how other ways play out.
That's very Cyberpunk.
yeah, that's
you made the choices for like right reasons, but it turns out with bad circumstances.
It wasn't even I was making very selfish choices. And then like the selfishness wasn't like rewarded, I guess. So yeah.
Okay.
I was like,
they forced you into a
boo.
more altruistic ending?
No, not even like no, they did not force me into altruistic. It was just like I was trying to make selfish choices and then the people I was trying to like be with or whatever were just like, peace out, I'm leaving. And I was like, what the fuck? Boo. So yeah, that was frustrating, but so I have put the game down before I like because when you beat the game, it's like, okay, like we're going to reload you now before that point of no return mission, so you can go and do other side quest stuff if you want, and or you can like replay it and try a different ending or choose different options and stuff. And so I haven't gone to like try some of those other options. But yeah, I was just like, it left such a bad taste in my mouth. I was like, I'm going to go ahead and play a couple other games before I come back to Cyberpunk here. But yeah, overall, like I had a good enough time with the game. But like bugs were like the biggest issues I've encountered bugs wise were, my character, like the hat and hair combination never wants to come in. So like if I ever look in a mirror or if I'm like when I'm riding a motorcycle or something, I'm bald just like for a while. When I look in a mirror, I never like the hair and hat just never come on. I'm just always bald.
Oh, yeah,
but
no,
when I am on a motorcycle, it's bald and then like briefly. Yeah. So that kind of stuff is like whatever. And then there were a couple issues where I couldn't change to like third person mode when I was driving because that's just I drive in third person mode.
Yeah, there's too much going on if you drive
like
in first person. It's too distracting.
Yeah, for me it was like the dashboard just takes up way too much of the screen. So I was like, I can't see the road that I'm trying, like, so I don't know where I'm trying to go.
I saw that with the cop cars too. Like the cop cars have that metal sheet in front of it, like a fence.
Yeah.
And so if you get in a cop car and you're in first person, you can't even see out of it at all.
Yeah. So yeah, that was some frustrating stuff. But yeah, like overall, like those things aside, and I did have like, I had a number of audio issues where it was like either I wasn't hearing audio that I was supposed to be hearing, or I was like getting like double looped audio and stuff like that. But like I seem to have had a much better, smoother time than a lot of people. And I'm very fortunate for that, especially on the console experience. But yeah, like the bigger issues I have with the game were like the story just didn't impress me all that much, in terms of like the main thrust of the story. And some of the writing, like, I've also caught like a handful of like typos in the subtitles and stuff, or in even the selections that I was making. I posted one the other day that was like, I was talking to a character and I was like, one of the options was to ask, how'd he die? Was basically like what I was supposed to ask, but it was written out, how'd he died? And I was like, that's not at all grammatically correct. How did he died? I have not seen the one that I saw going around where it's just like Night City spelled wrong on like a big piece of the architecture or something in the world. But yeah, just like stuff like that is dumb. I I don't know. I can't think of a menu UI I have hated more than this game. That's the most egregious thing for me, really, is like hopping into the menu, especially for the amount of times I'm selling gear and weapons and stuff like that. Because I loot, because that's what it's like. I'm trying to like get money, so like I pick up every gun off of every body, and when I try and sell those guns, selling it like the menu is constantly like reshuffling. And you can't just like bulk sell stuff or anything like that. So like I absolutely hate how that all plays out. And also like it's constantly in like comparing mode. So you like you'll scroll over a gun and it's showing you that gun's information as well as your currently equipped weapons information, and that takes up like half the screen right there. I'm just like, this is not at all intuitive. And I also had a tweet that I did not. When I put this tweet out the other day, I did not expect it to go as viral as it did. But I basically said like, I'm really tired of this like trend in games that we got where it's just like, hey, this is going to be an experience for the PC, so we're just going to give you way too much shit, and we're just going to give you a mouse cursor. And on console, you just have to move the analog stick around to those things. Like last I checked, that thing had like 100 retweets and like 2,000 likes or something like that. Like that went crazy. So a lot of people, share that sentiment with me, but like Cyberpunk has been the most egregious on that one.
100%.
Because of like all of those things combined, has just been like incredibly a frustrating experience. So like every time I have to hop in the menu, I'm just like, this is not going to be a fun time. Let's just like get through this as quickly as we can and then get back to the action of the game.
Not being able to
because that's
sell,
certainly where there's more fun.
Not being able to bulk sell is literally the bane of my existence.
Yeah.
At one point, I went enough and I did enough side missions out in the Badlands, because you have to like wait 24 hours to do the last Pan Am mission, and I was like, I'll just do this normally, and I'll just do some side quests out here. And so for 24 hours, I did every single side availability in the Badlands, and it's just like, and like I ended up being, like I was several times over my weight carrying limit, to the point where when I did one of the side
you just stayed over encumbered?
Yeah,
I like never did that. Like anytime I would get over encumbered, the first thing I did was go to one of those like drop stations and just offload whatever I could.
This is how I dealt with it, Trevor. By then I had double jump, and so if I got frustrated, I would just double jump. Or I had really like I would do the shuffle dodge, but just moving forward. So you just like stutter forward.
Okay.
But at one time I was like, oh, I gotta sell this stuff, and then Dakota's like, hey, have a mission for you, and she's like, yeah, you have to break into this thing, break somebody out, like try not to make it bloody, and I was over encumbered, and so like I was like, I'm gonna do this as stealthily as I can, and it's like, no, did not work out at all, and I had to like massacre the entire base. And I went back, and like the people are cowering because they've just been hearing nothing but like blood-curdling screams as I've absolutely decimated people as I slowly shuffle my way in to get to the guy that I need to get to. And, and afterwards, I finished the mission, and I get a call from Dakota. She goes, like, "What did I tell you about not a lot of bloodshed? Like, what's wrong with you?"
Yeah.
And I want to be like, I'm sad there's no option for me to tell me, listen, I was carrying a lot of stuff at the time.
I love that I know exactly which mission you're talking about, and my approach to that mission was I did it. I didn't realize I wasn't supposed to kill people the first time around. So like as soon as I saw that after I failed that optional objective. So I was like, oh, let me try this. I could not at all do that stealthily. So I got to the point where I was like, all right, fuck it. I'm just going to go in there. I'm just going to like run straight to this guy. I don't care if everybody knows I'm there. It's not like go in and like remain undetected. It's just don't kill people.
Yeah.
So I just I beeline straight to that guy, just letting everybody shoot at me as much as they could. I'm like healing or I'm dodging it. Like basically nobody was actually hitting me, but everybody is shooting at me. So I ended up being mostly annoyed by how long it took to talk to that guy to get him to follow you. But then also I just laughed my ass off because then we just like walked out of, or like I ran out of the facility and he just ran behind me. Nobody's trying to shoot him or kill him or anything. It's like it's the most wonderful escort mission you can have because he's invincible and nobody's trying to kill him as we're fleeing this place. So we basically, as soon as we get out of the base, we hop into a car and like I take him where he needs to be, and I'm just like, yep, that was my approach to that mission. We just like ran in, like I didn't shoot anybody, I just let everybody shoot at me, and then we booked it out of there.
Yeah,
So yeah, again, these are the kinds of stories I like. I like comparing and contrasting our different approaches to some of these missions.
I think
because that's one I definitely look forward to getting to the point where I'm just like, yeah, I know you didn't want me to kill anybody, but I just wanted to massacre all these people.
there you go.
So
for me, it's just like, listen, they saw me and then they shot at me, and once you do that, like I can't take back the mantis blades are out. I can't take them back in. And it's like, yeah, you can. You just have to switch. No. Shh. I can't put them back in. Cameron, you used the sniper rifle half the time. Shh.
There's one piece of cyberware, or maybe it was a mod I got or something, but it was basically like all of your weapons will default to non-lethal, and I wonder if that would work with the mantis blades too. Like if suddenly they just turn into non-lethal mantis blades.
Yeah. They're blunt objects now, and you just knock people out.
Or you just hit very specific pressure points to incapacitate them and not kill them.
I don't know if that works, because I put the mod on my mantis blades where they're on fire, and I incinerate people.
It's non-lethal.
I don't know how it's like burning a person to a crisp doesn't kill them.
Yeah.
But they're alive under that, like on the inside.
On the inside, yeah. No, I like literally. It's awesome because it'll be like cutting these people with a lot of high health, and then I'll move out of the way, and they've caught on fire, and I just like, as I'm killing their friends, like they're burning to death. And like this is truly how I was meant to feel in my real life, but God denies it to me, and so I must feel it here. I just came with that.
Create Darth Vader out there.
I mean, like I actually created Freddie Mercury. So
there you go.
I created a bluish green haired Freddie Mercury with that good old bushy mustache. And if I could have like altered the teeth instead of just like doing weird teeth options,
and a big dong.
And to be fair, it's not
and you got a big old dong.
It's not that fair. Or to be fair, it's not that big. They could have gone bigger.
I mean, especially compared to the dildos you find in that.
Yeah,
game.
it's like nothing makes you feel
these
more
are
inadequate.
way too big.
Yeah, there's nothing makes you feel more inadequate when you have a dildo club and it's bigger than the actual penis on your character.
Yeah,
it's like this is not a 1-to-1 scale replica, because if I could, I would. It's like this is a replica of my dong.
Of course. Frank, do you have any questions for us?
Yeah.
About our Cyberpunk experience?
I don't think so. I've definitely been keeping up with everything, even though I haven't played it yet myself, and I really want to, but just some of the larger stuff with CDPR, like, it's kind of been holding me out from it. But I've been following it still, and even my roommate's been playing it a ton too. He's been having more bugs than I think both of you guys, though. He's also on PS4 Pro, which is what I would be on too. But it's like, yeah, it's funny almost like hearing the other room. Like I can hear through the speaker, I can kind of hear it going, and then all of a sudden the music and everything just stops. And I'm just like, oh, it crashed.
Yeah, I will say I deal with, it is not irregular for me if like I play it like for a 4 to 8 hour session. Actually, anywhere from like a 2 to 8 hour session, I will say it's like me getting crashing at least once is totally the norm. But like the autosave feature works fairly well. So
yeah.
That all tracks with what he said too, because he said in any given session that's a couple hours long, it's going to crash at least once, but if not like 2 or 3 times. But he also did say he usually doesn't lose a lot of progress because of the autosave.
Yeah, I from any of the crashes, I never lost like a ton of progress. I lost more progress like when I just died in the in a mission or something like that. And it wasn't even like that I lost a lot of progress so much as like the autosave was when I was on the other side of the city before I started that mission or something like that, and so I have to like travel back to where I was at the mission because I just died in the in a combat zone or something like that. They do a pretty. I mean, ultimately, also I I've been conditioned to do manual saves on a lot of those games. So
Yep.
I probably had somewhere around 30 manual saves because there's also, at least on console, you are limited by the number of manual save spots you have. So at some point, I had to start like recycling some of my first ones, and I probably made it like halfway through the recycling of them. I think you have like 20 slots, so yeah, I probably had like 30 manual saves throughout the game just to be like, okay, like I feel like this is going to be a key mission or something. I want to make sure I do this like the right way, or at least how I'm deeming it the right way, or like I want to try it one way and then maybe I'll switch up and try it another way. Yeah, but overall, like it'll be interesting. I started kind of putting together maybe like my top 10 games of the year list, and I think right now I don't think it's currently in my top 10. Just because and that's
really?
and that's like, it's not because it's a bad game or anything. It's just like there
It's a
were
hard
other
year.
games that I enjoyed more than this game. Right now it is number 10 for me. But that's like, because I'm gonna do like I did last year. I'll do a top 20 when all is said and done. And I have like 13 or 14 other games that are in the currently in my honorable mentions bucket of thing that I'm gonna put and shift into ordering, and one or two of them might bump Cyberpunk down the list. Because yeah, there were a lot of games I enjoyed, and just games I enjoyed more than this one this year.
I think it's fair. It's a good year.
And
Yeah,
also
for
like
sure.
there is an element of it that is like, I really am disimpressed by how badly like everything has been going on with this, and it's not like,
Yeah.
even if it hasn't directly affected like my time playing the game, like it is there in the back of my mind as I'm playing
Yeah.
the game, and seeing these frustrations that other people are having and all this kind of stuff. So it'll be especially interesting when I switch over to do a PlayStation run of the game, to see how how that plays out. It's also one like part of the reason I had it on Xbox Series X because I bought the Cyberpunk like limited edition console, the One X, back when it was supposed to launch, a few months back. So I had the game on Xbox already, and so I was like, all right, I'll play, based on Xbox. It's probably supposed to run better on Xbox because obviously they had the Microsoft deal. And so I was like, all right, like I'll try that experience out first. Also to see like, okay, then I will know if I'm going to try and do like a platinum run of the game. And like playing through, I was like, I don't think I'm going to try and do a platinum run of the game, because you have to do like every side mission in every borough around the map. And I'm like, there's a ton that I just don't care about. Like the helping the cops and doing all those like things. It's just like, nope, don't feel like I need to do all of those and find all of those things around the world. Especially not a second time. So, yeah. But overall, like I had a good time with it. It's just a matter of like, there were a lot of other games that came out this year that I enjoyed better. And this, like, it definitely had like impossible expectations, but the fact
Yeah.
that it just also wasn't like what I was expecting necessarily. Like I wasn't expecting
okay.
it to be more like a Fallout that it has been. For whatever reason, like until we started seeing like reviews of the game, like that's when it first hit me that like, oh, this is gonna be more like, a Fallout 3, Fallout 4 kind of thing. And like I love the Fallout series and I love those kinds of games, but playing through Cyberpunk made me realize I specifically love those because I love the like the retro future of Fallout, more than
The
I
retro
love.
dystopian.
Yeah, more than I love the cyberpunk future of Cyberpunk. So,
That's fair.
yeah.
I definitely
But
gravitated heavily toward. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I also like it. Also made me like, I have a huge itch now to go back and play Skyrim of all things as well. So I'm just like, thank God there's so many other things to do that I don't have the time to do that, because I really want to go back and play Skyrim. And I really want to
Yeah.
go back and play like Mass Effect and stuff like that. I'm just like, I don't know. Stick with the new games. I can play Mass Effect Trilogy when it comes out next year in the remastered collection or remake or whatever. But yeah, like Skyrim in particular, again, and it's probably because I was playing on Xbox and they just put Skyrim as part of Game Pass, and I'm like, it's tempting, but no, don't do it, Trevor. Don't do it.
I will only ever replay Skyrim on PC, because once you start using mods on PC, even the moddable console versions just don't stack up to it.
Yeah. Weirdly, that was where I actually first played Skyrim. I put 300 hours in on PC, and I almost never play PC, but I played that one on PC, and I never really did too much. I never went too crazy with the mods. I would pick
neither
up
did
like
I.
the graphic enhancing mods and stuff like that. And I
Quality
picked
of
up
life
the
improvement
mod.
mods, yeah.
Yeah, I picked up the mod that put all of the, what was it, like there was like a quest where it was like there's 100 things around the map,
Yeah.
and it gave map markers for all of them.
Mhm.
I picked up that mod, and I was like, yes, that is something
mod,
I
yeah.
need, so I know
The
where
hero
those
we
things are.
need.
Yeah, that's the one.
But yeah,
No, there's that one, and then there's also I got like a bunch of weapon mod packs, so I could like craft cool weapons.
yeah.
I ran around with Glamdring Gandalf sword for a long time, because that's
Nice.
a baller sword.
I think I did that. I think I probably did that with some kind of Final Fantasy add-on.
Oh, you know it. Also, if
Yeah.
you did not equip the bandolier, like you did not get the bandolier mod, you should have. The bandolier mod is awesome, because it's extra pockets for carrying stuff, but also you look cool with a bandolier.
Nice.
I was gonna say, so like my experience with Cyberpunk is, I love Cyberpunk as a genre. It's something that I've really enjoyed. I've read The Neuromancer. I've read, I love Blade Runner. That kind of future, like that kind of, it's for a lot of the same reasons I enjoy the Fallout universe. Is it's so, like, there's something very intrinsically fun about playing and watching and like absorbing media based in a dystopian society. And I think that a lot of people, when they think and they looked at Cyberpunk, they're like, oh, cool, a sci-fi game, a cool futuristic game, not realizing that this is very much a corporate dystopia of society, and how gross it is. But that's part of the charm of Cyberpunk, is that it's exploring the lines of humanity in a very particular way that I've really enjoyed. Cyberpunk doesn't do that as much as I would have liked it to.
Yeah,
I don't know.
There were a few.
I don't think it's gonna. Yeah, it's definitely in my top 10 this year. Just between, I love the genre, and so doing quests and missions and stuff and living in a cyberpunk world has been like, it's a interesting theme to have applied to an open world. But like, there's definitely been better stuff this year. But that being said, I will definitely walk away with like Cyberpunk being a highlight for me versus a low light.
Yeah,
So.
there were a few philosophical things that I thought the game does from a narrative sense that really came to light in like the end game for me, that left me thinking like, oh, that's a cool idea that they explored. I wish that had been explored earlier on, because when it comes in at the end of the game, I'm like, okay, but is that setting up like a future story that where it's going to be examined further? As opposed to, if that idea and that concept had been set up like at the beginning of the game, and that was what I was grappling with the whole rest of the time, I would have been very intrigued by that. But yeah, again, it goes back to kind of what we maybe started this conversation out with, is like, I just feel like there were a lot of missed opportunities where they could have said something or could have provoked ideas, and they didn't. It's a, like, there
That's
were
my
a
biggest
few
disappointment
times
in the game.
there were a few times where I felt like, oh, this is Blade Runner, but it was almost always more from an aesthetic as opposed to from like a cerebral, like, broaching ideas that you see in a Blade Runner, or like in a in something like Isaac Asimov, I think just
Yeah.
does it didn't examine the futuristic kinds of questions that I thought the game could have
Yeah.
in so many cases. So, but yeah, it's I mean,
Oh, I did
like
want to mention.
yeah, go ahead.
I did want to mention that in regards to. Uh, there's a very poignant moment that I was extreme, and I guess this is to your point to it, where there are these moments. There's a moment in the mission where you're tracking down a character as part of an early one of the main quests, where you go to a like a brothel,
Mm-hmm.
and you have the option to be like you're basically sat down, but because they are scanned directly towards your proclivities, instead of like asking you questions, you just jack in to their scanner and it preloads a determined person for you. And I was shocked by how like boldly intimate that moment got, and like the
Mm.
kind of like dialogue choices I was given
Yeah.
to say like that is a moment I was like there. Like before, my thought was V's kind of like a much more brash character. Like there's not like, but to get a very like soft, quiet, philosophical moment in like a quote unquote den of sin, to get something so like poignant
Mm-hmm.
and almost spiritual on some level, because it's like it's so good, and you can make that decision to have that quiet, poignant moment instead of just like engaging in carnal behavior. And I was deeply impressed by that. And then I
And I
knocked a
love
dude
that
out while he was
also.
peeing at the urinal, and
Nice.
took his key
Oh
card
yeah.
to get into the VIP area.
Yep. I did the same. Um, yeah.
That explains my cyberpunk experience right there.
I love that in that like very kind of deep philosophical conversation that you're having or emotional connection conversation that you're having, like the first dialogue choice was always like the safe word as well. Like, and so it's like if you wanted to keep the conversation going, you had to like scroll down and pick one of the other options as opposed to like the safe word that would have shut everything down. Yeah, so there were moments in this game where I was like, I want it to be more of that. And they were just too few and far between for me to really elevate this into like top tier of this game or even this genre of games like your Fallout's, like your Skyrims, that kind of stuff. Your big open world RPG kind of stuff. But like, yeah, it was a good enough time. And I look forward to 6 months from now when the game is better,
Oh yeah.
is patched and you know runs better on systems, when there is a next gen version, a proper next gen version, all that stuff. It's just unfortunate that yeah, like all of the stuff surrounding this game that was seemingly rushed out the door by the executives who wanted to get their payday before. Who wanted to get their Christmas bonuses, I guess. Yeah, but
That's
so
frustrating. It's so frustrating. But I
that's
just
our
hope
cyberpunk thoughts. Yeah, go ahead.
I did just want to say that I really do hope that, I know I keep saying I just want to say, like it's going to be the last thing that I say, um, but there is something I really hope that comes out of Cyberpunk, is that we get more people getting into the Cyberpunk genre.
Hmm.
I think that it is such a fertile, like it's so fertile of a genre to explore and ask these questions that we just did not get to, like CD Projekt Red just did not take the opportunity to probe and ask. I really hope that people kind of take the torch and lead it to a better place as a genre. Um, but we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, I hope that it does enough to set a trend to inspire more game developers to reach into this space that I just feel is like so untapped as a resource for a genre.
Yeah,
There's been a couple of, because if you can delve past just the cyberpunk aesthetic to actually get into the themes of the genre, it can be so amazing. And I hope that a studio does it better and whether it's open world RPG or not. Like I want to see more Cyberpunk stories, and so hopefully that happens.
Did you play? Have you checked out Ghost Runner?
I watched Andy play it on his stream.
Mm-hmm.
Really liked it. I really think that it's cool. I want to play it when I get the chance to. So
Yeah, it's. I mean, like yeah. I remember we covered it a little bit at PAX East earlier in the year. I picked it up when it came out and dove into it. I love the aesthetic, and like even in the early stages of that game, I thought it was introducing some interesting questions into its narrative. It just was too difficult for me, and first person. What was the game last year? I mean, first person like Mirror's Edge / like Hotline Miami is just like I'm not good enough at those games. So I was constantly dying, and just got to the point of like I'm never gonna make it through this game, so I'm not gonna try at this point anymore. But I've been seeing a lot of people kind of like try and chime in on the Cyberpunk conversation of like, here's the real good Cyberpunk game that came out earlier this year.
Just don't do that.
Runner.
I hate it when people.
Yeah.
I hate it when people do that.
Yeah.
Because saying, well, this is what really should be the topic of it's just so pretentious.
I mean, yeah.
And I know I've been guilty of it in the past, but yeah.
I mean, yeah. They're punching down at a game that is clearly like on the ropes a little bit. But
it's the gif of please stop. He's already dead.
Yeah. But if that kind of game appeals to you, certainly I think Ghost Runner it certainly I think goes into the cyberpunk aesthetic and themes at least a little bit if the gameplay is right for you as well. But yeah, that's gonna do it I think for this episode of That Nerdy Site Show. Thank you, Frank, in particular, for sitting through Cam and I talk Cyberpunk for an hour plus there. But thank you also for your Assassin's Creed impressions to kick us off there at the beginning of the show. And yeah, that's gonna do it. So let's go around the metaphorical table with any plugs we have. You can follow Cameron at RevCavett. Cam, anything you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I have a written piece on the site about it's a little after the topic's already kind of just like quieted down. When I started writing it, it was as loud as it could be. Mm-hmm. And I've definitely missed the chance to chime in, but I have chimed in on the debate on Soulsborne games and difficulty and accessibility. It's a piece that I actually really like, which is normally I look back at previous pieces that I've written and I nitpick them to death. Mm-hmm. But this time, between Jazz's editing and kind of like putting my passion for these Soulsborne games, as well as really the vantage point that I don't have in regards to accessibility, mm-hmm. and how I've learned from the vantage point of others in regards to it, and how it can be applied like when we get to the end of the year, like you will hear me like I have the problems I have with The Last of Us Part 2, but The Last of Us Part 2's accessibility features are game changing, and I would love to see those go forward. So there's a lot in that piece about accessibility, Soulsborne as a genre, that I hope people read and enjoy. And if you don't enjoy it, you can tweet at me. I don't care. I'll just mute you. But yeah, other than that, I guess that's it.
Yeah, no, it's a solid piece. I refrained from hopping in and giving edits, so I was glad Jazz hopped on that one. And shout out to Jazz for kind of taking point on the edits on that one, because I and you and I have had various conversations on this over the years, but I didn't want like my perspective on the thing kind of coming in and like taking hold of your piece or anything like that. But I read it and enjoyed it. So yeah, definitely check out Cam's piece on that. It's something obviously he's been teasing on our shows for a little while. So it is now out and available. Everybody can kind of go check that out. And you say that like the conversations as soon as Elden Ring flares back up, the conversation will come back. The conversation comes back every time a new FromSoft type game comes out. So we can just reshare it then.
Yeah, I will say for the sake of accessibility, once I have my PC and everything up and running, I will be recording a like good audio version of it,
Cool.
of reading of the piece, so that way for those of you who are visually uh, who have visual accessibility issues, I'll be happy to have that made available for you at that time. But
Yeah.
I want to make sure I don't just put out a sloppy bad audio version from my headset mic. So that's my goal with that. That's why that hasn't already happened.
Cool. Good to know. You can follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes. Anything you want to give a shout out to, Frank?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to our other podcast, that D Plus Show. The episode we put up this last week is for Nightmare Before Christmas, and we're still in sort of that holiday spirit. Even though I know we kind of talked about in the episode, like the debate between is that a Halloween or is that a Christmas movie. But that's that'll be a good one to check out while it's Christmas week, the week that this actually goes up if you're listening to it. So I think it's perfect timing.
Yeah. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkian. I just echo both of those shout outs. Go check out Cam's piece or check out that Plus show we've been doing all sorts of holiday stuff this month. We did a Halloween month back in October, and we did some Christmas movies this go round. So check out all of that stuff, and you can check out everything from us over at That Nerdy Site or thatnerdysite.com. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. And if you are feeling extra generous, you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/thatnerdysite, where every patron gets early access to a bonus monthly episode of this very show. This month's episode is the three of us, as well as Logan, sitting down talking about some of our favorite forgotten gems from the last generation of gaming, as kind of a send-off to the PS4 and Xbox One generation of things. That'll go live to everybody the end of December, but if you support us on Patreon at the $1 or above, you can get access to that episode right now. And it was a good one. So yeah, thank you guys for joining me. Thank you, audience, for listening. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.